Hey guys, it's Dwayne, Huff, Band Leadership Seminars, Band Leadership Online, and I hope that you are having a tremendous marching band season. I know it's the beginning of the year and the beginning of the season. That's when everything's fun, exciting, energizing. Everybody wants to be there. But very shortly, if it hasn't happened already, what you're going to start running across is challenges, pushback, frustration, emotions that come from your peers, maybe even from yourself. And so I'm here to tell you today that as a leader, it's all emotional, and here's how to deal with it. And what I mean by that is that the reactions that you're going to be getting from some of your peers as they get frustrated, as things get challenging, as the things that they have to do outside of band start to stack up and the deadline is starting to hit and they get frustrated, I want you to realize that 95% of the time, if not more, it all comes down to one single thing, and that's the emotion. And here's what I mean by that. I teach this in my live seminars. I also teach it in the online course. And if you ever seen me live, you know we go through this. But I want to share it with you here on Facebook and maybe even YouTube or wherever else we sent this out after. And if you have a question about it, please drop it in the comments below, no matter what platform, social media platform you're using. Because even if you're watching the replay and you have a question about this, or if you have a story to share, or if you have an example, or if you need a little more guidance, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help throughout marching band season, and because leadership is a year-round thing, I'm also here to help you, not only you student leaders in the band program, but also if you're a band director watching this, I'm here for you as well. Don't hesitate to shoot a question over to me. But the reason I wanted to share this with you is because one of the things I do teach in my live events and in the online course is the parts of the brain that drive what we do. And when I say it's all emotional, and here's how to deal with it, here's what I want to share with you that not long ago a neuroscientist shared with me about our brain and the way it works. Now, if you've ever seen Dr. Tim live, he also is very famous for saying that as leaders, you're not capable of what we're asking you to do. And so that all ties back to this. Here's what the neuroscientist explained to me. If you were to take your hand and hold it up and consider that the brain, your brain, my brain, everybody's brain is built in basically three different areas. If you looked at the bottom of the brain, the base of the brain, which is back here, it's known as the lizard brain or the reptilian brain. And it's responsible for our instinct and reaction in a fight or flight situation. So when things get challenging, when things get threatening and things are happening in that moment, we're either going to fight, we're going to flight, or we're going to flee. And that's the part of the brain that is responsible for that. But the second part of the brain, if you were to roll your thumb over, this is what the neuroscientist explained to me. He said in the middle of the brain, which is basically in the very center of the brain, it's about the size of an almond, is the limbic system or the emotional brain. And this is the part that I really want you to understand and know about. See, that part of the brain is what, as teenagers, and I'm not picking on you, it's true for all of us as we come through that phase, that is a very heightened part of your brain because your brain is still fully developing. It's not fully developed yet, it's still in the process, but that part is super sensitive and hyper aware. And it's a beautiful thing because what it gives you as a student leader and as a teenager, whether you're 14 to 17, 18 years old, it gives you a heightened sense of when people are not genuine and not real, and maybe even BSing you, right? But it's also the center of the drama and the emotion that happens internally with yourself and with your peers. You know, I always make a joke whenever we're in the live events or in the online course. I'll say, hey guys, let's talk about what makes a team effective. And people will list those things out, such as communication, is working together, is a common goal, is leadership. And I'll say, okay, well, what makes a team ineffective or can pull a team apart to where you can't work together effectively? And they'll say things like miscommunication, not paying attention, not having a common goal. And then inevitably somebody says drama. And I stop it right there. I say, whoa, 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 whoa. Drama? With teenagers? And of course everybody laughs because it's a heightened thing. And that's what's going on right here at the center of the brain, that emotional center. That is what it's there for. It only understands one simple thing. And that one simple thing is what you feel. It doesn't understand reason. It doesn't understand numbers, facts, statistics, logic, words. It only understands how you feel. So when you or your peers get frustrated, things get challenging, you're overwhelmed, all of a sudden you go to that emotional place, and many times that's what can cause you to shut down, to give up, to procrastinate, to put things off, or to avoid things, because it's an emotional response. So whenever your peers lash out at you, or when they bark at you, or they get in your face, or they just shut down, or they get frustrated, how do you help them through that situation? And if it's you, how do you get yourself out of that situation? Well, as a general term, or as a general way of saying this, we have to get out of the emotional brain and into the next part of the brain, which is the logical brain. It's called the cerebral cortex. It's the rest of your brain right here. It's what's responsible for logic, reason, facts, evidence, justification. And if we can help our peers and ourselves get out of this part of the brain into this part of the brain, then they can start thinking through things. And instead of going condition response, if you studied science and psychology in school, you may have heard of Pavlov's dog, the experiment where he rang a bell, the dog salivated because of the baking powder, right? It was a condition response thing. And when people are emotional, many times that's exactly what they do. They go from here to here, to here, to here, to here, to here. It's emotion. It's condition response. It's this happened, I'm emotional, I respond, right? But if we can get ourselves and our peers out of the emotional brain into the rational brain, then all of a sudden they can start thinking through things, understanding things, coming down from that emotional extreme and work on things logically and sensibly. So how do you do it? You do it by having the wherewithal as a leader to pause in the moment, take a deep breath, listen, and then ask specific questions. Now, before I share those specific questions with you, let me share the final part of the brain that this neuroscientist shared with me. He says, Dwayne, whenever you get to the end of the cerebral cortex, there's something right here in the front of your brain. And I always do this in my seminars and point to this, and I say, point to this part of your brain, and everybody in the room points, and I say, just wanted to see if I could make you do that. That's called the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And if you are a student less than 23 or 24 years old, high school or college, I've got some bad news for you. You don't have that part of the brain yet. It doesn't develop until we're 23, 24, 25 years old. But it's vital for understanding the consequences of the actions and decisions we take and make. Here's what I mean by that. If you made a decision as a leader right now and you did something that had a certain consequence, whether that was 5 days down the road or 5 years down the road, you don't have the full capacity to see that ramification. That's why your students, that's why your teachers, that's why your parents, that's why your band directors, and the adults in your life are so important to guide you, because you don't have that yet, right? And that's why many times the emotional center can get us in trouble. So let me back up and say this. If you are your peers are in this drama state, this emotional state, they're frustrated, they're angry, they're overwhelmed, and they're pushing back, they're not paying attention to rehearsal, they're talking, and they're lashing out at each other, as a leader, if you can step in there and ask some very strategic questions to back them up, get them to calm down, and think through things, you have a better chance of re-engaging them and getting them refocused in the matter at hand, whether that's rehearsal, a performance, or whatever the case might be. Here's how I saw this work out, and it's kind of the same. I didn't see it necessarily whenever I was a student. I mean, I'm sure I did. I just didn't know how to deal with it. I saw it recently, one of the first jobs that I had out of college. I was working in a retail environment selling cell phones, and one day this lady comes in the door, and you could just see by the look on her face that she was not happy, right? And of course, she was operating from this part of the brain. Well, I looked like a deer caught in the headlights because I was scared to death. But she walks up to me and she gets in my face and she looks at me and she says, "I'm not happy." I can tell, right? And sometimes you're going to see this with your peers, right? They're not happy and they get in your face about it. And instead of reacting to that situation and escalating the emotion, because how many of you know that are watching this, if you react, if you don't take that thing between condition and response and you don't choose in the middle of that action, how many of you know if you lash back out at your peers whenever they lash at you, all of a sudden it escalates very quickly, right? But I didn't do that. And in that moment, I had to make a decision. What do I do? So before I told the lady or started directing her or started talking back to her, I just stopped in the moment and I said, "Can you do me a favor real quick?" I said, I'm willing to help you and I'll do whatever it takes, but could you please put a smile on your face, because I feel like you're mad at me. And she looked at me, and in a moment she just went, "Oh." She started breaking down. I'm like, "Oh my God, I just lost my job," right? that emotional response was able to come out and release. Here's why I tell you this. Because if we, as leaders in the moment, when our peers are not thinking rationally, but they're thinking emotionally, and they're knee-jerk reaction, and they're going off on each other, or they're not paying attention, or they're frustrated, or they just want to quit and give up, if we can step in and ask a simple question as a couple of phrases I'll give you, you can write these down if you want to. If you could walk up to them and say, hey, let's talk about this for a second. Tell me exactly what's happening. And just be quiet enough to listen and let them get it out. What it does is it takes it from here and brings it to here. Because they're not thinking logically. They're not thinking about what's going on. They're just thinking about how they feel, and they're reacting to it. Some other things that we could do is we could ask them questions that get them to open up and talk to us. My 3 favorite things to say are, tell me about that, explain for me, and describe. So in your particular situation, if you're in a rehearsal and things are breaking down and everybody seems frustrated, if you were to pull them aside and you would say, hey guys, tell me what's going on. Help me to understand, explain it to me. Describe the situation for me. And you were just to be the one that would be quiet and listen, then they would open up, they would vent, they would get it out, and it may seem like it's going to escalate, but you have the ability to now understand and know exactly what's going on. And if you're patient enough, you could say, okay, great. Now that we understand, let's talk through this. What's the first thing that needs to happen? What do we need to do next? What's the point of frustration? How do we fix it? What's going well, right? Another thing that you could ask them, you could say, can you tell me more about that? By that very nature, you're giving them the floor and the opportunity to open up and share their frustration, their angst, their anxiety, their emotion, and get it all out. And once they do that, guys, it allows them to go here. And now they start thinking logically and reasonably. It pulls them out of that emotional state and gives you a better opportunity to guide and lead them in the direction they need to go. Another phrase that I like to use is, tell me more about that, or how do you mean exactly? You know, one of the things that's a saving grace and that might help you as a student leader, if somebody ever gets in your face and just goes off on you and just gives you, if you could just pause in the moment, not to put an ugly look on your face, not put a big cheesy smile on your face, but just simply inquire honestly and just simply say, how do you mean exactly? Think about that. I just look at you, you go off on me, right? Like this lady did in the store. You go off on me and I say, okay, how do you mean exactly? I didn't get confrontational. I didn't get ugly. I simply asked you a non-emotional question. How do you mean exactly? Because many times when people are emotional and they go off on you, they're not thinking. They don't have that prefrontal cortex part of the brain, and so they're not thinking about the consequences, or they're not capable to see the consequences of going off on somebody in the moment. And we've all said things in the heat of battle, or the heat of passion, or the heat of emotion or drama that we've regretted. As leaders, it's our responsibility to take that condition, that response, and put a choice in between it. And we can do that for ourselves and for them. So here's what I'm saying. As it says in the title there, it's all emotional. Here's how to deal with it. Realize that they're operating from here. We need to get them here because they're not thinking right there. They don't have the capacity. But if we can step in, if we can ask a question, if we can be sincere, fully present, and listen to what they have to say, what's bothering, what's troubling, what's overwhelming. Many times, and you know this, many times it's not even what's going on around the rehearsal. It's something that happened at home. It's something their teacher put on them. It's a deadline they're facing, and it's got them frustrated and emotional, and they just can't take it anymore, so they snap, and many times they go off on the people who are closest to them. Right? And the other side of that coin is this. I heard this today and I thought it was absolutely overwhelming. Realize that as guys, boys, tend to build things up and break things down. It's just what we do. From the time we're young until the time we're old, we're either building stuff or we're tearing stuff down. It's just kind of our nature. And whenever we're angry, when we're frustrated, whenever we're emotional, we will lash out and try to tear somebody else down. And that's a general rule. I'm not saying it's all guys, but that's our tendency to either build up or to tear down. Now, if you're a leader and you're a guy, use that to your advantage, right? Because if you know that building people up is a natural tendency, or building things up is a natural tendency, the first thing you have to build up is yourself. And if you can't do that, go out and build up other people. Girls in general have a tendency from, instead of building up and tearing down things, they'll have a tendency to build up or tear down themselves. So if they get emotional, and this is a general term, and there's evidence and science behind it that I couldn't even point to. It was a mentor I trust who shared this with me today. And basically what happens is they'll go inward and they'll start tearing themselves down. And we all know people, guy and girl, right, who will be a little too hard on themselves, right? And so our job as leaders is to guide and to direct that in a positive way. We've got to get them out of the emotional into the logical. And by simply being there, being fully present, being patient, asking a question, and being that battering ram and the person that people go off on and beat up on emotionally, not physically, right? But if they want to say unkind words and if they want to pick on us and they want to take it out on us, I'm not saying we should be there all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But if we could be that person, that strong person in the moment who realizes what they're going through, and it's not about us, and it might not have anything to do, or it might have something to do with what's going on around. If we could be that person who stops them in the moment and empowers them to think through what's going on, then all of a sudden, it's not as overwhelming if they can get it out and talk about it. Many times people just need to get it out and talk about it. That's our job as leaders. You see, we're creating an experience for people. We're creating an experience for people, not just out on the field and in the rehearsal, but a human experience that they take with them forward. And that's the power that we have as leaders with our words, with our actions, with our presence. And many times we forget that. But today I want you to realize that when people are frustrated and there's angst and there's overwhelm and they go off on their peers, they go off on you, or they want to quit or they want to give up, that it's just an emotional response. And if we can help them get in that logical response, we guide them, we lead them, and we serve them in a way that most of the people in their lives will not. And you have that power as a leader. So remember, it's all emotional. That's how to deal with it. So I hope this served you. If it did, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If you have a question for more description, please do that. And please share it with someone who will also appreciate it and enjoy it. If you haven't liked the page already, please do that. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned. I'll put out some more content that will help you throughout marching band season and throughout the year, because we're here to serve and to give you what you need to be effective as student leaders today, for the rest of marching band season, and throughout your student experience and student leadership experience. Remember, you can inspire superior performance. You've just got to be willing to make the commitment. Help your peers with the experience they need to be successful. And always remember that you have the power with your words and your actions to lift people up or tear people down, but you accepted the call to leadership, so it's your responsibility to lift them up. Have a great day. Have an awesome marching band season, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.